Welcome to the Infill Podcast, where we interview the most interesting members of the 3D printing and maker communities live and with audience participation. And now, here is your host, Jonathan Levy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome for what is guaranteed to be another wonderful episode of the Infill Podcast. My guest today is an active member of the 3D printing community, as they all are. His name is Kenneth Jiang, and he is the founder, CEO. He's the person, one of the people behind Obico, which, formerly known as the Spaghetti Detective, is the, I guess, originator of failure detection and remote access to your 3D printer. But all around, Kenneth is just an awesome guy that I love chatting with. We've chatted a few times, and I really wanted to get him on the podcast to talk about AI failure detection, how it works. Is it the future of failure detection? Are there better ways that we could be doing failure detection? And just some of the changes that are happening on the software side of 3D printing. We're always talking about all the hardware changes that are happening, and they're happening very fast. But there's also a software revolution going, and our 3D printers are getting smarter, and the tools we're using to access them are getting smarter as well. So without any further ado, Kenneth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So first off, I would love if you would give a little bit of your background, your origin story, and how you got into 3D printing, and then how you got into the software of 3D printing.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, first of all, I kind of like more want to call myself a developer rather than CEO and founder,
Fair enough.
because that's really who I am. Yeah, I have been doing like software developments like professionally uh, since 1999. So like I don't know, last count of how many years. Um, the but also I have also been a maker myself.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as you and all the other audience in this live podcast. So yeah, so I guess the over the years I built software and I also make things. And this is I guess when like that's why I got into 3D printing pretty much from the early years. I remember it was probably 2010, about that time. I think the MakerBot was the one that kind of like, oh, like, hey, interesting, open
Mm-hmm.
source. Well, unfortunately, they closed afterwards. The open source 3D printer. I'm like, really? Um, yeah, and then the it I got I've been following the 3D printers, MakerBots. They were too expensive. And then I got my first printer, I think around 2016 or 2017, when the price has, come down enough
Right.
and the hardware is like reliable enough. Um, I think my first printer was ANET. I don't know if you remember that.
That was before my time, even.
Okay, so it was like funny, like the ANET printer was one of, I guess, the first like really commodity level printer. And one thing they were famous for is that their tendency to catch fires.
Right. I've heard that.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a
So
long
you
way
got
to
into
say
3D
like,
printing early on. You were a software developer. At what point did you start developing software for 3D printers, and at what point did it become your full-time job?
oh, it's a really good continuation of, my story. I got my ANET, and then uh, like the first thing I noticed, being a software developer, I guess, was that how like outdated the software
Right.
was. And it didn't take me a long time before I discovered Octoprint,
Right.
which, is, by the way, a really amazing piece of software. So, and then I installed Octoprint on my Raspberry Pi, I guess just like almost everyone else. And then, soon after that, I discovered that, well, actually, there are still things to desire, to like not so perfect with Octoprint itself.
Right.
And then but Octoprint provides amazing like capability to build plugins.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm a software engineer. I know how to do it. Yeah, it didn't take me long time, like very long, probably just a couple of months before I started to build my first Octoprint plugin.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was a slicer plugin. So like at that time, it's actually funny that now how people do it, because at the time I visualize, I imagine that people would want to slice things in directly in Octoprint
Right.
and just print from there. So I built a plugin. It's called Slicer plugin. It's probably still there um, in Octoprint. So basically, you can actually use Cura directly within Octoprint.
Wow.
So that was basically how I got started into like the software, really building software for 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. And then tell me about the story of the Spaghetti Detective. Did it start out as a side project? Did it start, I mean, you're in Silicon Valley. Did it start out, you knew this was going to be a thing? Uh, how did that whole thing come about?
Uh, Totally started as a side project. I still had a full-time job at the time as a developer in a startup in the city, San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I remember it was like I was actually learning. I was trying to build. I was teaching myself AI at the time, because that
Mm-hmm.
was already a buzzword even at that time. I think it was 2018 was probably when I was doing it. Um, and then I built a self-driving robot using machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that time, I was also printing the part for the robot. And then after I'd done that project, I turned around and I realized like actually all the algorithm I was using for the self-driving robot at that time could really be like directly applicable for detecting the failures I'm having every day when I'm 3D printing.
Wow.
So that was really how it got started. But I totally, it was really just a like, okay, AI is fun, 3D printing is fun. Let's just do something about it. Really didn't at that time that was not crossing my mind at all in terms of this can be that big.
Right.
But it's funny. Okay, the funny story was that I built the Spaghetti Detective, put that in the Octoprint plugin manager. Like probably just after a few months,
Mm-hmm.
the traffic to my server was already because at that time I was managing about a team of like 15 developers in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's well funded. It was a well funded startup. But several months into the Spready Detective, which I was running on the side, the traffic, because I was monitoring the traffic, for my full-time job as well as for the Spaghetti Detective,
Right.
and the traffic to my Spaghetti Detective server was like 10 times higher than the traffic that going to the backend system that a team of 15 developers was running.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, there's something there.
That's an amazing accomplishment. And it's cool
Yeah.
because I, I think on some level Octoprint it's ubiquitous, right? But not every 3D
Yeah.
printer uses Octoprint. There's plenty of people
Right.
who just get an Ender and use SD cards. And then plugins within Octoprint is even more niche within that. And then
Yeah.
specific plugins like remote, there are a lot of people who work from home and they're like, I don't care about remote access. My printer's behind me all day. Um, from the very get go, was it about also remote access, or in the beginning was it just about failure detection?
It was 100% about failure detection.
Cool, cool. And then remote access comes, I guess, once you have failure detection. Now people are comfortable to like go outside and leave their printers.
Well, it was actually what I later discovered was that people were already going outside. I was doing that myself to do the
Mm,
port forwarding. There's some points when like the port forwarding was very popular before
right.
people realized that was a terrible idea.
Right.
because you really open up your network, internal network to the well, the internet. But
Right.
anyway, people were already doing that. People were already going out. At least the people who
Yeah.
managed to do the pull forwarding. Uh, yeah. So but shortly after the Spaghetti Detective, our users started to tell us like, hey, I don't just want AI to watch my prints. I want to watch them myself too.
Yeah.
I'm
That
like,
makes a lot of
sure.
sense. That makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. How many hours roughly do you think Obico Spaghetti Detective the AI has actually watched of 3D printing? It's got to be like billions of hours, right?
I'm not sure if that the bill. I've already I stopped tracking it. I remember the time when I celebrate the first million hour and then the
Yeah.
first 5 million hour. I remember after 50 million hour, well, like,
Oh my.
nah, let's just
That's
not track it.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you figure like Prusa claims they've done 100 million hours on the Mark IV or something like that. Or maybe it was 100,000 hours. I don't think it could be 100 million hours.
I
Then again, they
don't
have
think they're.
500, 600 of them running at any given time. So I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know. I
we
don't know
have
the
a
maths.
couple of
But
alternatives higher than that.
okay. So you're now full time in developing software for 3D printing. It's all
Yeah,
Obico, which is now the name of
yeah.
Spaghetti Detective. What are you printing and what do you print with? Tell me about your printers. Tell me what kind of stuff you're printing for yourself.
Oh, that's a really good question. So I have one mini,
Prusa Mini. Yep.
uh, Prusa Mini, two Ender 3, two Ender 3s.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I converted to Clipper.
Cool.
Um, I I had a net for a long time. Guess
Right.
what? It caught fire. It didn't really caught fire, but
Oh my
the
gosh.
the main board really got burned.
Wow.
Uh, so I trashed
Okay. Yeah,
that.
that's out.
So yeah, to me, I mostly print like really like practical stuff. Like this is like what I printed for. This is a Jason Nano. Actually, the reason why I just printed this case was that we could use this Jason Nano to demo our software in Merv. So the
Cool.
last year that was the first time I was using. So let me just take it out for you. So it was like this, right? It's funny. Last year I took this to Merv,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I didn't have a case, so I really just tried to balance this on
Oh, how funny.
a stack of book, and so that it won't get shorted.
Wow.
This year I have the case. So that's
So a lot of
basically
functional
the
stuff.
mostly functional stuff.
Cool. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Now our audience is doing a really, really good job, guys. Keep up. They're keeping me on task because I want to hear about printers and prints, but they want to hear. So Vast CNC wants to know about using AI hardware like the NVIDIA Jetson and Google Coral. Before we get to that, let's talk really quickly for the layman among us like me who've heard about machine learning, right, or AI, but don't really understand at kind of a cursory level. Can you explain how something like Spaghetti Detective actually works?
Yeah, totally. So let me think. I think it's fair. It's a gross simplification, but it's fair to think of it's a fair way to think of AI or machine learning as a like a super sophisticated pattern matching
Okay.
mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, like for example, like we have gone quite a bit of beyond just like detecting spaghetti, but like if we say we want to detect the spaghetti what we want to like what we did basically, again, gross simplification. We gave like a lot of spaghetti images to the AI and
Mm-hmm.
tell the AI, hey, try to match anything that look like these spaghetti. So basically that, and then the AI is actually nothing but a huge uh, calculator, if you will. So it's sucking all the pixels and uh, does this like calculating thing and spit out if there's a spaghetti or no spaghetti, right? So, but then what the AI, that the training specifically does is to tune all these bits in the calculator so that like to maximize the chance when the output says it is a spaghetti, it is actually, it actually has a spaghetti. And then minimize the chance when it says, oh, it's a spaghetti, but no, there's no spaghetti.
So
So
it's
that's
not
basically
actually
how.
looking, is it actually looking, you said pixel by pixel, but then you also said bits. Is it actually looking at the pixels? Because like computers can't read images very
Right.
well. So it's actually
Mhm.
converting it into data and then matching the data, like bits, ones and zeros.
Yes, ones and zeros. Basically, the convert the pixels to ones and zeros, and then
Wow.
there's the model, the AI model itself. You can think of as, again the calculator, but there's a lot of like ones and zeros there
Wow.
to multiply. They're really just doing multiplication. Multiply those bits inside the calculator with the bits that coming out of those pixels. And then
Wow.
at the end of the day, when you multiply all these things together, you end up with one value, right? The value is between 0 and 1. If it's 1, then it's between 0 and 1. It's the closer it is to 1, the
Wow.
more likely the machine learning think that there's a spaghetti. So that's
Okay. Now
basically,
you said something that
yeah.
caught my attention, which is you guys have moved way beyond spaghetti. So what other types of failures can be detected with a model like this?
Okay. It's still under wraps because we're
Okay.
gonna do one interesting thing in Merv, and then we kind
Okay.
of want to make Merv the first time we really
Okay. Okay.
show
So why
like
don't we do this?
whatever under the wrap.
Hypothetically, let me ask if these types of things could be detected, and you tell me if they could or if that's a challenge.
Mhm.
Layer shifts.
Challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah.
What's always been interesting to me is the the Raspberry Pi or whatever has the model and it should know what the print should look like at every given stage,
Mhm.
right? You can play the G code. So it's been always been interesting to me that you can't just match. Like, does it look like this or does it not?
That's a really good point. We have thought about this long and hard. Uh, I can talk more about this because we're not going to demo this. We haven't solved this problem.
Right.
Um, I guess there are some sticky points about this thought process. The first is that uh, if you know it's precisely where the camera mounts, like it's mounted,
Uh,
and like, and you know precisely the camera parameters. So the problem is,
mhm.
in case you didn't know, the camera introduces distortion, right? Because depending
Right.
on the focal length, depending on the shape of the lens and everything.
And what
So the
angle are you looking at the G code? Are you looking dead on the
right
front of the model
angle,
or the top? Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly. So that's
Mhm.
one like really really sticky point. Another sticky like less sticky points involves like lighting, involve like the yeah like if there's a
Yeah.
shadow, how do you know if it's a shadow or it's a real thing?
Right.
Yeah, we know, but like
It could be a hole. It could be under extrusion. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about
right.
that. Um, okay, back to our game because that's a fun game. Uh, Clogged nozzle and new layers not coming down. Possible or a real challenge?
Uh, Relatively easy. I have been resisting to spend time there because
Hmm.
I just feel like this is a job that can be better done with a sensor.
Right.
I'm a little bit disappointed to see that like the filament sensor has not really come out like that. Like it's not as ubiquitous as I hope that it would be. That's I guess
Right.
what I am trying to say.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you have a really reliable filament sensor, then like the clogged like filament or whatever, air printing can really be detected easily.
Right. You would think. Well,
Exactly,
okay.
but I
Before
would.
before I say this, I will say I've done zero calibration whatsoever, and I did the quick installation mode, and I have not read the instructions thoroughly on how to properly calibrate. But I installed the Dies Design Orthis, which they sent to me because I
Hmm.
wanted to play around with it. And it detects filament, that there is filament there perfectly. But it
Oh.
does an insane amount. Again, I have not calibrated it properly. Maybe Maple Leaf Makers, who's a big Voron guy and who's in the chat here, can help me
Hmm.
calibrate it properly. It gives me like every 3 seconds false positive that the filament isn't moving.
Mm.
So my theory is, again, that's a great product if you are a tinkerer or you're putting it on a Voron and you kind of know your way around Clipper, you're comfortable modifying config files, you're comfortable tweaking the angle of the actual, device so that it's sitting perfectly. But putting that on an Ender 3, it's just going to be a customer service nightmare if it's not
Mm.
perfectly calibrated from the factory, and then if it falls out of calibration, or if someone decides, I mean, I printed, I can't say what filament I printed, but I printed something that is akin to like a wood filament with a lot of fibers in it, and it just like stop, like something's wrong, filament's not extruding,
Mm.
did not like it. So I kind of get why those aren't ubiquitous, but I do hope that they will become ubiquitous because
Right.
let me tell you, that's my absolute worst kind of failure. I use Obico, by the way, a lot, especially now that my printers,
Thank
most
you.
of them are not here with me. So I just leave my printers running at the studio, and I have the comfort of knowing that most failures will be detected and filament won't be wasted. But then the clogged nozzle drives me nuts because it slowly clogs.
Mm.
So there's no good way to resume the print. And it's just
Hmm.
everything that printed before is gone.
Yeah, so
Unless it's
here's
a
another
perfect
thing.
clog.
Yeah, well, this is another reason why I feel like, the clock nozzle thing should be like outsourced to the hardware. The
Right.
problem is that when I say it's relatively easy to detect with AI, I'm talking about when you have been air printing for a while and there's a very visible gap between the
Right.
part and the nozzle. It's not
Right.
that hard for
Sure.
the AI to figure out. But by the time it's already too late. Whereas in theory, the hardware sensor should be able to like detect the clock nozzle almost instantaneously, right? So,
Right. Yeah, and I
but
don't
yeah, I
fully
get like
understand how that
every.
works, right? So the next extruder has a load cell in the extruder. I guess the theory is it would sense, I don't understand where along the path of the filament it would sense the pressure. Do you know?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think it's
know.
a precious thing. Though I haven't really done much research on that.
Yeah, see,
But
what
now
I
you
don't
mentioned
understand,
this, I
maybe
think.
someone in the comments understands, is like the
Yeah.
filament's going in straight. If it was a broken piece of filament, right, and I had a load cell pushing on the back of the piece of filament, I get it. But it's like, how is it catching on to the filament as it extrudes enough that it can sense those super precise measurements without adding additional resistance, friction? So that part I don't get. Maybe it does add
Yeah.
additional friction, and that's why they need the planetary gearbox to push through that friction. But if someone in the comments knows how that load cell works, um, it's very interesting. Or maybe it's something, the pressure that is being applied to the hot end and pushing it down. I'm sure we could look this up, but that's all
Yeah,
right.
I think almost this is I think similar to, well, I'm just using my the spaghetti detection as a almost like a reference point. I, when I realized it was like very doable in theory, it actually took me a long time to
Right,
fine tune it to a point that it actually usable.
right,
So I can see that this is probably what's happening to the load cell
right,
sensor. Whereas, yeah, like, hey, in theory it's doable, but like, in reality, you got a lot of like, the practical problems to deal with, noises or like temperature fluctuation. I'm just making things up, but I can totally
right.
see. those being problems.
Right. Chris and Vast CNC both answered. It's the second thing. It's measuring the amount of pressure that the filament is pushing on to the hot end. So therefore, if you have a clog, that pressure would increase. I've
Right.
heard Joe say that ostensibly, if the sensor should be accurate enough that if the model falls over, that pressure decreases because now the filament can extrude freely instead of being constrained. So theoretically,
Right.
and no, I'm not wearing nail polish. I was painting today. Theoretically, you should be able to know even from that load sensor if the model fell over or if you have a layer shift and you're now printing on air. That's very
Right.
cool. I'll believe it when I see it because right now input shaping is yet live on the Mark IV. So,
Exactly.
but Prusa, to their credit, does continue to release. I mean, they're good about putting the hardware in and then releasing firmware that will take advantage of it years and years after. Um, you know, so are you guys exploring? I mean, are there better ways to do failure detection? Is load cell an interesting thing? Are you guys exploring a hardware add-on or partnerships with uh, you know, extruder manufacturers to where you could improve the efficacy of your product, or is AI really good enough that you guys are happy with the model?
We're always looking for like like more things, fun things to do, right? Like yeah, I guess after Merv, you're gonna see like what we actually have been working on recently. I can see. I feel like the data output of, I could be wrong, I'm just making things up because I kind of I'm visualizing the data output of the load cell sensor as a linear one-dimensional data. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's probably simple enough that you don't really need the deep learning. You probably only need the traditional, like the machine learning to deal
Right,
with it. Whereas like the deep learning usually best for like handling like really massive amount of like a picture looks simple, but like it
right.
actually like it's got like millions of
And yet I
bits
still
in
have to
it.
tell Google what a fire hydrant is, for captchas. So,
Yeah, so but I could be wrong. Like it is very possible that like the low cell sensor will actually require a more sophisticated like deep learning algorithm
right.
to tune to a point where like it's very reliable. That is
Hmm.
possible. But we haven't really explored like in that direction. I'll be happy to like maybe you can connect us to someone to really explore this
I
direction.
mean, as much as the folks at Prussia love me and are huge fans of me, no, I don't have a contact there as much. Um, but I think it is interesting. One thing that I mentioned to you before we hit record is I'm excited but also saddened to see companies like Anchor and Bamboo do their own failure detection. And
Mhm.
I'm excited because competition is always good, right?
Yeah.
Uh, for the consumer and also for businesses. But I'm disappointed because it's just like, Google and Waymo and Tesla are all trying to do, what's it called, autonomous driving, and they're not sharing data. And so I know Anchor is not sharing data with you, and
Mhm.
Bamboo is not sharing data with you, and therefore you have no, so you have potentially 100 million hours of prints that you've watched, and I don't know. It makes me sad as a consumer that people aren't pooling forces. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts of each of these companies doing their own failure detection, and the way that I understand machine learning models, they're inherently going to be at a huge disadvantage to someone like you or even Gadget from Octo Everywhere that has 100,000 people feeding their data all day every day.
I actually have a quite a different view when it comes to like I think the way I look at it is that the ideally if we can assume everyone is like 100% altruistic,
Mm-hmm.
pulling the effort together, it may maximize the outcome, right? Even if we're just taking a very like utilitarian like point of view.
Right.
But I feel like, in general, competitions is good.
Yep.
So I'm actually happy to see that like Obico is not the only one that's,
Right.
providing a failure detection algorithm, right? We have plenty of other people who actually follow suit and, develop the similar um, like solution, which is really good in my opinion, right?
Yep.
It if anything, it motivates me to get better,
Right.
right? I'm a very like I'm very in my I thought I'm very disciplined person, but I can still see that I can use a little bit of extrinsic motivation to say like, hey, you have to keep on moving, right? You can't just like be happy, say, oh, I built this spaghetti detective and now I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, I mean, those. I guess. I. I mean, I guess someone could come along and do it better, but isn't the nature of these machine learning algorithms like, Tesla has more cars on the road, which means they have more data, which means their model will be better. You guys have printers from every manufacturer, not just limited to Bamboo or Anchor, for years and years and years. Won't your model just be better?
I am not sure because I
Mm-hmm.
think this is where like it does it is an extra hurdle for any newcomer or like a smaller player to clear. But I think, in order to like innovation, in my opinion, like a big part of the innovation is really about clearing all kinds of different hurdles, right?
Right.
So I feel like uh yeah, like having yet another hurdle to clear is not a good thing, but I don't want to remove that hurdle at the cost of removing competition altogether.
Yeah.
If you know what
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's interesting. I do wish. I love to see, for the most part. I have a printer here to my right that tried to do their own software and they really blew it and they ruined the whole printer. And I won't show which printer it is, so make sure you guys are subscribed. But for the most part, I love these companies doing these beautiful iPhone apps and wonderful user experiences, but then either open it up so that I can add my other printers to my Bamboo app or my Anchor app, or opening it up so that I can use, I mean, I track all my printers on Obico. So just let me add my printer to Obico. Like, what would it cost Bamboo or Anchor or Creality, who has a cloud app, or Anycubic, I guess? It wouldn't cost them anything. And it's these little things that like require, I think, the printer manufacturers to put aside the natural desire and drive to create a walled ecosystem, or even if
Yeah.
it's not a walled ecosystem, create a cohesive ecosystem, a brand ecosystem. Even Anycubic wants their own slicers, right? Put that aside and just think about the user, right? What does the user want? They want all their printers in one app. They want to use the same slicer for all their printers. They want the same filament to work on all their printers. They would love for all their printers to recognize the RFID tag and all their filaments to have the RFID. It's these little things that's like, it's maybe not the best business strategy to play nice with others, software or hardware, but consumers really appreciate it. And when people go in the opposite direction, Chi2 Box just did a whole thing where now the Wi-Fi module or the Wi-Fi component of Chi2 Box is only going to work with printers that use Chi2 hardware. People hate that kind of thing. It's so stupid. Why would
Yeah.
you do that? It's not going to make me buy a Chi2 printer. It's going to make me stop using the software as well. So
Yeah.
that's my rant.
I think yeah, I can see some like I guess business calculation.
Right.
at least the hint of it behind that. But I would also say that this is actually where uh, serving maker community is actually almost a blessing in my opinion, right? Like I remember like Creality Sonic Pack was a really, really good product,
Yep.
right? It is like just like almost from any angle. But it was locked down, like when they just pushed
Yep.
it out. It's funny that the before very long, the main community, guess what? They just like jailbreak it, and I remember the one of the Obico community member even like wrote up uh, a guide for, hey, here's how you can jailbreak Sonic Pad and install Obico now.
So yes, and the Creality K1 I don't think is even on the market yet. Is it out actually? I'm not I think
I'm
it's
not,
out.
I'm quite confused as
I've
well.
already
Yeah.
jailbroken mine. And I got to be honest with you, it's way better this way. Like it, my review was going to be a very very harsh one and then I found a tutorial on how to just get normal Clipper running on it. Um anyway, I digress. Speaking of normal Clipper though, Maple Leaf Makers has a great question. You guys integrated with Clipper recently, which is the trendy
Oh, a
thing,
long time
right?
ago, last year.
Yeah, that's right. Last year,
Hmm.
Octo Everywhere added it recently.
Hmm.
Uh, everyone knows Clipper is kind of the hot thing in 2023. How challenging was that? How is it different from your perspective from Octoprint? And you said that one of your printers is now running Clipper, so I'm interested to hear your comparison as a developer.
Um, so forgive me if I'm getting a little bit too nerdy on this. Um, but I'm pretty familiar with like the internal inner workings of both Octoprint and Clipper. It's actually Clipper is actually interesting, right? It's one of the things that's different from Octoprint is that Octoprint is like it got all the stacks from UI to like the driver communicating like on the wire to the
Right,
printer, like
right,
all in just one piece of software. Whereas Clipper, like it's actually not just one software; it's a tool chain, right? We're talking about Clipper probably at a pretty low level, but then you have like Moonraker on top of it, and then you have like the different UI level. You could like two major players here is the mainsail and Fluid. So it's a very different software like architecture philosophy compared to Octoprint.
right.
So as a developer, I'm like, I may like more like a tiered, like more separate model. Uh, and I do like it creates a lot of like advantage when I'm integrating with it. For example, like, it's easy to integrate with just a API because it's just so it makes the interface very stable and easy to test.
For Octoprint.
But no, that's for the sorry, yeah, I probably skipped this part. So the API primary or API exists in Octoprint, but it's a optional thing to use if you are developing a plugin. You
Got it.
can really just directly call into the function, like because you're running inside Octoprint anyway. You don't have
Got it.
to use the API. Whereas the Clipper toolchain, this ecosystem requires you to use API because they're not going to load you into their memory. Um, and then but the good thing about that is that now it's easy, like the I can test the API. The API is more like well defined because everyone has to use API, right? If there's
Right.
any bug there, it's already caught. And then it's easy to test as well. Like I can just use the command line curl to test the API. So there, like a lot of advantage, especially from the like software, like very philosophical, like how you can keep things like the separation of concerns, like information hiding. Those are all like software jargons to say what kind of
Right.
software will be. easier to maintain. However, a really big drawback from what I can see right now is that um, because like Octoprint is one thing, easier to it's much easier to customize actually
Right.
how the software behave. Like I can pop up window, like show an icon, show a progress bar on the Octoprint, like without any problem. Whereas none of these things now, as of today, is actually doable with the Clipper toolchain.
Right.
I was actually working like with Eric, like basically the developer behind like one of the developers behind the Clipper toolchain,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in terms of like, hey, I want to show a warning if something goes wrong. How can I do that? It turned out that it's not easy to do. So eventually, what I had to do was to have a workaround that, hey, if there's a warning, I would show the warning in Octoprint, but now if the warning happens inside Clipper, I'll have to route it through our server and show the warning in our Obico app, which is a little bit confusing. It's not
Right.
the end of the world. So, well,
Yeah. Okay. So
I guess,
benefits and
um,
downsides. I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, where it just feels to me. We talked with someone who developed Octo app for Android, and it just feels to me
hmm,
like Octoprint has a long history and therefore has a lot of baggage and has to support a lot of old plugins, and not all of them are updated. And Clipper, as you said, is kind of like a very clean, like I'm not a developer, so the best way I can think of it is like iPhone, right? Like their iPhone app developers can only do specific things with specific tools, and they can't just change my iPhone and like add a bunch of crap that I don't want. And that's how Clipper
right,
feels to me. Like I was blown
right,
away because, as you said, it's like you can't change the interface, you can't do all this stuff. I was blown away when I installed this Orthis filament monitor and they added a little button. I guess I added a little button because they had me put in some config files. But there's a little button on
right.
the Clipper screen and a little button on my interface that just showed up, and it shows like,
Hmm.
is the Orthis on or off, and does it detect filament or not? And I was like, whoa! I've never seen that on Clipper. Like third
Right,
party hardware integrated right on. But then I thought about it
right,
for a minute. I was like, well, all my fans are showing, my stealth burner LEDs are showing. So it can be
right.
done. It just has to be done in a very specific way.
No, it has to be done. Basically, user have to configure
Right.
these things.
Right.
Yeah, we could do these. Well, the anyway, so different way of doing things, pros and cons. And I
Right.
agree that with Christian, you talked to Christian, right?
Yes.
Uh, where you said, okay, yeah, yeah, I agree with his assessment in terms of, yeah, Octoprint does have some baggage to like
Yeah.
compared to Clipper because they have been just around for so much longer.
Right. Right. That's actually a really interesting idea uh, that you could do. See, I love the cleanliness of Clipper. I love that. Like, I don't want to have the temptation to customize stuff. Just like give me my panels. Don't let me move them around too much. If I'm gonna add a new app, just give me one little chip that goes in there, right? But one really cool thing I love on the Obico app, and I'm realizing I do need to do a sponsor read because I've almost forgotten to do it. Episode not sponsored by Obico, but I will say I love on the Obico app where it shows me the level of how fishy the print is. And you could just add a little chip there that shows green, red, or yellow.
Hmm.
On that note, we do need to take a moment to thank this episode's wonderful sponsor. This episode is brought to you guys by PCBWay, and PCBWay is your one stop shop for all things fab. They do sheet metal design, they do injection molding, they do 3D printing, metal 3D printing, CNC machining, really anything. Now, personally, I don't know how to design sheet metal assemblies. I also don't know how to design PCBs. But don't let that stop you. because there is an entire library of projects that other people have created on PCBWay that you can just go online and click and order the parts that they designed and ordered. They get a little credit, which is awesome. And so, like, let's say I want to make these modular speakers, which are really, really cool. I can go on and just see all the stuff that was designed for this project and add it to my cart, and all the PCBs will just show up. So to check out PCBWay, visit the link in the description. And thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this episode and putting up with the fact that I always forget to do the sponsor read and always mute my microphone. All right, we're back. Hectic. And then the doorbell started ringing. That's how you know we record this live. So that could be a very, very cool idea. Adding in the whole yellow, green, that would be neat. But I will say that I prefer to, I just access my printers through Obico, and that's been nice, just through the app.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Let's see what questions we have from our wonderful audience. DJ is Pro wants to know about privacy. Does Obico constantly access the camera even if the printer isn't printing?
It's a really good question. So we the AI only look at your camera only when you're printing. But you can, if you're a pro subscriber, you can look at your camera anytime.
Right.
But it's routed through the web protocol that's called WebRTC. So WebRTC is a peer-to-peer protocol. Basically, it routes directly from Pi to your phone,
Okay.
or computer if you're using it. However, we also like connect to your printer all the time. So we do have the plugin to pin our server, like even if you are not printing, just to make sure that it is live and what's the anything's wrong, the temperature is still, the heater is still on, whatever.
Right.
So, and this is actually why I know that privacy is a concern for like a lot of people, including myself. And this is actually why we cannot open source the server. And I'm pretty sure we're the only one in who's doing the 3D, like the failure detection like solution, who also open source the server side. So if you, I totally understand if you still have a concern in terms of like, hey, I just don't want to have anything to do with whatever you host in your cloud. You can just pull our source code and host it on your own. So we have a pretty thorough guide for running your own self-hosted Obico server.
That's very cool. Doesn't that eat into your business though?
I'm pretty sure it has, but
What is the right thing to do?
I don't know. Yeah, I feel it feels like the right thing to do.
Very, very cool. Amir Khan asks, can you use Obico with the Sonic Pad? We mentioned this, but it's a good question worth bringing up again.
Yes, we don't have official support for the Sonic Pad, but there are plenty of Obico community members who have already figured out the things themselves and posted online. So just search Obico Sonic Pad. I'm pretty sure you're gonna land one of those guides that can actually help you set up that Obico with Sonic Pad.
DJ is Pro asks a follow-up question. If Obico is peer-to-peer, can a man in the middle get in the middle and do stuff with your printer?
It is always possible. We actually, I don't know if Jonathan, you were aware, we actually ran into a security problem probably 2 years ago, and we fixed that pretty quickly. But it was a really like man in the middle attack. So it is always possible, and this is actually another reason why I feel like open sourcing it is the right thing to do. There's a saying that any bugs will be shallow, like when you have enough eyeballs on it. So it is possible.
Very cool.
I guess the only thing we can say is we just try to do better and plug all the holes.
Yeah. So on that note, Vast CNC wants to know about self-hosted hardware like the Jetson and maybe Coral.
Oh yeah. So Jetson is definitely doable. I have it here. We actually have a pretty thorough guide for how you can set up Jetson, Jetson Nano specifically.
Mm-hmm.
This is the cheapest model, but it can probably run 10 printers, like failure detection, full speed 10 printers.
Wow.
Coral, it's less popular, so we haven't really. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure people have asked this, but I don't remember if they have figured things out themselves. It shouldn't be that hard. Basically, you
Cool.
just need to make sure that the GPU part is connected to our algorithm, and our algorithm is using the GPU.
That's really cool. It's I self-host my own Bitcoin and Lightning node, so I'm all about like for certain things. That's more important security wise to me than my print. But it's cool the idea of like I have my own hardware doing my own. I mean, I'm verifying and hashing every single block on the Bitcoin blockchain. So
Hmm.
doing my own failure detection is also kind of cool. I do want to also ask a clarifying question. So you said peer to peer, but Obico is also encrypted, right? It's a peer to peer encrypted connection.
Yeah, it's always HTTPS. Yeah,
Right.
SSL basically. Yeah.
Right. Very cool. Well, I want to ask you some of our quick wrap up questions. The first one is if you need to print something and you just need it to work, what's the printer you're going to?
Hmm, that's a really good question. It used to be definitely my mini,
Mm-hmm.
but the Ender 3v2
Mm-hmm.
Neo, I'm quite happy with it so far. I got it, I think, either earlier this year or last year, late last year. It has, yeah, it has impressed me. That's the
Very
only
cool.
thing I can say
Very cool.
about it.
Any favorite filaments that you love printing with?
No, I just
No,
grab
no
whatever
favorite.
that's cheap on Amazon.
Fair enough. Last thing that you printed.
Last thing I printed, I think it was this one.
Ah,
It
okay.
just, yeah, for
That's
the
for
Jetson
the
Nano
Jetson.
for the
Okay,
demo.
very cool. I
Yeah.
hope you didn't print that in PLA because it'll melt, I assume.
No. Uh, it, I think it's PTG. I don't exactly
Okay.
remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Kenneth, I know we're coming up on time here. I do want to give you an opportunity to tell people how they can learn more. I know you guys also have a blog, but where can people reach out? You guys do some great social media. Neil on your team has some awesome social media. So plug all your links.
Actually, I didn't prepare this part. To me, if you want to reach out to me personally, the easiest one is K, the first letter of my first name. It's obico.io, obico.io. We do have a Twitter that we are not extremely active on. It's obico slash no underscore io. That's our
Mhm.
Twitter handle. But what we are very active on is our own Discord server. So if you go to I would say I welcome anyone to join our Discord server, and it's
Awesome.
obico.io/discord. So you're typing that in your browser and you're going to be landing in our server.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the description. And obviously make sure to check out obico.io. You guys have a free plan, right? How does the free plan work? Remind me.
It's basically the essential functionality that you will need to print remotely safely. So it's fewer detection hours
Mm-hmm.
and also like lower like quality in terms of like the video cam
Yeah.
streaming, webcam streaming. So
Yeah.
yeah, but everything that you need, including the mobile app, that you want that you will need to print remotely and safely will
Yeah.
be
On
there
one
in the
printer, right?
free plan. On one printer only,
Yeah.
yes, that's a
Which
good
reminds
catch.
me, I need to upgrade my plan because I don't trust this K1 nearly. It doesn't have a camera, but as soon as it gets a
Your phone?
camera, I've already cracked the firmware. So I need to get this on Obico because let me tell you, this thing It makes spaghetti.
Oh, those are
Little spoiler for the review that's coming. The hardware is phenomenal though. But people will have to watch that review. Kenneth, I really want to thank you for coming on today. I really enjoyed chatting. Always a pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you better. And I look forward to the next time we chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, my friend. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infill Podcast. For show notes or links to anything mentioned in today's episode, visit thenextlayer.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to leave us a review wherever you're listening, or click the like button to let us know, and consider subscribing to The Next Layer on YouTube so you can tune in live and participate in the next conversation. We'll see you on The Next Layer.